The accident broke my pelvis in 3 places, but the silence afterward is what actually shattered me. At 33, I was learning to walk again while my bills piled up on the counter, unpaid. My mother told the world she was praying for me, then quietly disappeared with the money meant to save us. She thought she was escaping a burden, but she did not see my grandfather watching, waiting to make the one move that would trap her in her own lies. The ceiling tiles of the rehabilitation center were counted and recounted in my mind 1,000 times before I was finally allowed to leave. There were 142 of them in my room, stained with water damage in the corner above the window, a dull beige landscape that became my entire world. At 33 years old, I had expected my life to be defined by my career or my relationship, but instead, it was currently defined by the fracture running through my pelvis and the raw, electrical fire of nerve pain shooting down my left leg. The accident itself was a blur of screeching rubber and crushed metal, a moment of violence that separated my life into 2 distinct eras: the before, where I could walk to the mailbox without thinking, and the after, where lifting my leg to put on a sock required a level of strategic planning that made me want to weep. When the discharge nurse finally wheeled me out to the curb, the sun felt too bright, an aggressive intrusion after weeks of fluorescent humming. Mark was there, looking 5 years older than he had a month ago. He had adjusted the passenger seat of our sedan so far back it was practically in the rear row, trying to accommodate the stiff, unyielding reality of my legs. "Careful," he said, his voice tight with a terrifying gentleness. "Just take your time. Caroline, we have nowhere to be." It took me 10 minutes to get from the wheelchair to the car seat, 10 minutes of gritted teeth, humiliating groans, and the sickening sensation of bone knitting together inside a body that no longer felt like my own. When I finally settled in, sweat was prickling along my hairline. I stared out the window as we drove through the suburbs. The world had kept turning while I was staring at ceiling tiles. People were buying coffee. Someone was walking a dog. It felt insulting that the traffic lights still changed and the grass still grew while I had been dismantled. We pulled into the driveway of the house we had bought 2 years ago. It used to look welcoming, a little bungalow with a porch that needed painting. Now, the 3 steps leading up to the front door looked like a mountain range. Mark helped me inside. The house smelled stale, like dust and old anxiety. There were piles of mail on the side table, a mountain of envelopes that I was too tired to look at. The living room had been rearranged to accommodate a rented hospital bed because the stairs to our bedroom were impossible for me. My sanctuary had been turned into a medical bay. I sat on the edge of the rented bed, the plastic mattress crumping underneath me. I felt small. I felt broken. And more than anything, I felt a desperate, childish longing for my mother. Marlene arrived 2 hours later. She swept into the house with the energy of a woman arriving at a brunch date. Not a recovery ward. She was wearing a new linen tunic, something flowing and expensive-looking in a shade of terracotta that made her skin look luminous. She smelled of lavender and something sharp, like ozone. "Oh, my brave girl," she said, hovering over me but not quite touching me, as if my injury might be contagious. "Look at you. You are home. That is the important thing. The universe brought you back to this safe space." She pulled out her phone before she even took off her coat. She angled it so the light caught her good side. Framing herself in the foreground with my hospital bed and my pale, exhausted face in the background, she snapped 3 quick photos, her expression shifting instantly into a practiced look of somber resilience. I checked my own phone 20 minutes later. The post was already up. "My warrior daughter returns home today. The road is long, but love is the strongest medicine. Family is everything." Grateful healing journey. Mother-daughter bond. The comments were already flooding in, praising her strength, telling her she was an angel for being by my side. I looked up at her. She was sitting on my sofa, scrolling through the likes, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips. "Mom," I said, my voice rasping. "The doctor said I need to coordinate the physical therapy schedule this week. Did you call the insurance company like you said you would?" The pre-authorization forms? Marlene waved a hand dismissively, not looking up from her screen. It is on my list. Caroline, do not stress. Stress produces cortisol, which inhibits bone growth. I read an article about it. You need to focus on manifesting wellness, not getting bogged down in paperwork. But did you call them? I pressed. Mark has been working double shifts to cover the deductibles. I cannot ask him to spend 3 hours on hold. You said you would handle the administrative side. Marlene finally looked at me, her eyes wide and innocent. The picture of wounded good intentions, I thought it was handled, she said vaguely. I sent an email or something. Honestly, Caroline, you just got home. Why are you picking a fight? I am here, aren't I? I am bringing the positive energy you need. She stood up and walked to the kitchen. I heard the refrigerator open. Do we not have any almond milk? She called out. I am trying to cut out dairy. It creates inflammation. I closed my eyes and let my head fall back against the pillow. The nerve pain in my leg throbbed in time with my heartbeat. I did not have the energy to explain that Mark and I were drinking whatever was on sale because my disability payments had not started yet. The next 3 days were a blur of discomfort and rising tension. Marlene came and went, treating my house like a base of operations for her own life rather than a place of care. She would arrive at 10 in the morning, make herself tea, and spend hours on the phone talking to friends about how exhausting it was to be a caregiver. But she never actually gave care. She did not help me to the bathroom. She did not refill my water glass when the visiting nurse came to check my vitals. Marlene sat in the corner and critiqued the nurse's aura, suggesting that her energy was too frantic for a healing environment. Mark was fraying at the edges. I could see it in the dark circles under his eyes, the way his hands shook slightly when he poured my medication. He was doing everything: the cooking, the cleaning, the working, the lifting, while Marlene sat on our couch and cultivated her online persona as the saintly matriarch. The breaking point began with an envelope. It was a Wednesday. The mail carrier shoved a stack of letters through the slot in the door, and Mark brought them to me on his lunch break. He looked pale. There is a red stamp on this one, he said quietly, handing me a thick envelope from the hospital network. I tore it open with trembling fingers. The header screamed in bold, uppercase letters, "Final notice." I scanned the document. It was a bill for the initial surgery and the first week of my ICU stay. The total was staggering, but the part that made my stomach drop was the line item for the patient responsibility portion. It was thousands of dollars past due. I stared at the date. This should have been paid 3 weeks ago. We had the money in the dedicated savings account, the one my grandmother had set up for me years ago, the one Marlene had insisted on helping me manage because she claimed she had a better relationship with the bank. I waited until Marlene breezed in that afternoon. She was carrying a yoga mat and looking flushed, as if she had just come from a class. "Mom," I said, holding up the letter, "what is this?" She barely glanced at it. "It looks like a bill." "Caroline, really, the medical industry is so predatory. It is disgusting how they monetize suffering." "Mom," I said, my voice rising, "it is a final notice. It says we are being sent to collections. I gave you the access to the emergency fund account. You told me you sent the check. You told me specifically on the phone while I was in the rehab center that you had cleared the balance." Marlene stopped unpacking her bag. She turned to me, and for a second, the mask of the doting mother slipped. Her face went cold and smooth, like a stone. "I must have forgotten," she said. "How do you forget $6,000? I asked, the panic starting to rise in my chest. "Lower your voice," she snapped. "I have been under a lot of pressure. Caroline, seeing you like that, all broken and helpless, it does things to a mother. I was traumatized too. I probably just got the dates mixed up. Why are you attacking me?" "I am not attacking you. I am asking where the money is. If you did not pay the bill, is the money still in the account?" She looked away, fixing her gaze on the window. "You know," she said, her voice taking on a strange, wheedling tone, "you were driving very fast that night. I know you say it was the other car, but you have always been frantic. Maybe this is the universe telling you to slow down. Maybe if you were not so obsessed with money and control, these things would not happen to you. I stared at her, unable to breathe. She was pivoting. She was rewriting reality in real time to avoid answering a simple question about a bank balance. Check the account. I said, please, just show me the balance on your phone. My battery is dead, she said quickly. And honestly, Caroline, I do not appreciate the interrogation. I came here to help you do your stretches, and you are treating me like a criminal. I need a break. I'm going to take a nap in the guest room. She walked away before I could stop her. I was trapped in the bed, unable to chase her, unable to force her to look at me. I lay there, the paper trembling in my hand, listening to her footsteps recede down the hallway. That night, sleep was impossible. The pain in my hip was a dull, grinding ache, but the anxiety was sharper. Mark was asleep in the chair next to me, his mouth slightly open, exhausted, around 2 a.m. I heard a noise. The floorboards in the hallway creaked. It was Marlene. She was pacing. I could hear the faint murmur of her voice. She must have charged her phone. I strained to listen, holding my breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. I need more time, she whispered. Her voice carried through the thin drywall. No, you do not understand. She is awake now. She is asking questions. There was a pause. I am protecting myself, she hissed. I deserve a life too. I spent 20 years raising her. What about my turn? Another pause. I will move what is left tomorrow. Just have the paperwork ready. No, she will not know. She can barely get to the bathroom by herself. She is not going to be checking routing numbers. The silence that followed was heavier than lead. I lay in the dark, tears leaking from the corners of my eyes and sliding into my ears. It was not just incompetence. It was not just forgetfulness. My mother, the woman who had posted about our sacred bond 3 days ago, was stealing from me while I was crippled in a hospital bed. The next morning, the gravel in the driveway crunched under heavy tires. I looked out the window and saw a battered Ford pickup truck pulling in. It was a vehicle from another era, rusted around the wheel wells but impeccably clean. Grandpa Harold. He had not visited the rehab center. He was not a man for hospitals. He said they smelled like death and lies. He was my mother's father, but they shared nothing in common. Where Marlene was fluid and chaotic, Harold Weller was granite. He was 78 years old, a retired structural engineer who spoke in short sentences and believed that feelings were private things to be handled in the dark. He walked up the front steps slowly, carrying nothing but a small, spiral-bound notebook and a pen in his shirt pocket. He knocked once, firmly, and let himself in. "Hey, Grandpa," I said, trying to wipe the evidence of the night's crying from my face. He looked at me. His eyes were pale blue, surrounded by a roadmap of wrinkles, but they were sharp. He did not offer a hug. He did not offer platitudes about healing. He walked over to the rented bed and looked at my leg, then at the mountain of mail on the table. "Rough road," he said. "Yeah," I said, "it is." He pulled a wooden chair from the dining table and sat down next to the pile of envelopes. He did not ask for permission. He simply reached out a calloused hand and picked up the final notice I had left on top. He put on a pair of wire-rimmed reading glasses and studied it. Then he took the notebook out of his pocket. He opened it to a fresh page and wrote the date at the top. Then he wrote, "Hospital bill, past due, $6,000. He picked up the next envelope. Insurance explanation of benefits. He wrote that down too. Marlene came out of the guest room 10 minutes later, wearing a silk robe and holding a steaming mug of tea. She stopped dead when she saw her father sitting at the table. "Dad," she said, her voice tightening, "I did not know you were coming." Harold did not look up. He kept writing. "Phone was busy," he said. Marlene tightened the belt of her robe. "Well, we are fine here," she said, her voice pitching up a little too high. "We are just having a slow morning. Caroline needs rest. I am not sure she's up for visitors." Harold picked up another envelope. It was a bank statement that had arrived yesterday. One I had not opened yet. He slid it open with his thumb. "I am not a visitor," he said. He unfolded the statement. He stared at it for a long time. The silence in the room grew thick, suffocating. Marlene shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "Dad, give me that," she said. Stepping forward, "That is private. That is Caroline's personal business." Harold looked up then. He looked at his daughter with an expression I had never seen before. It was not anger. It was a profound, weary disappointment. "There are 3 withdrawals here." "Marlene," he said. "Dates match the week of the surgery. Transfer to an external account." Marlene's face went white, then splotchy red. "I was moving it for safekeeping," she said fast, "to protect it from identity theft. The hospital has terrible security. I was being a good steward." Harold looked back at the paper. "Who is the payee?" he asked. "It just says LRC." Marlene snatched the paper from his hand. "It is none of your business," she shouted. "My God, you come in here, judging everything, taking over like you always do. You always think I am incompetent. You always think I am messing up. I am saving this family." She turned to me, her eyes wild. "Caroline, tell him to leave. Tell him I have been handling everything. Tell him how hard I have been working." I looked at my mother. I saw the desperation in her eyes, but underneath it, I saw something else. I saw the cold calculation I had heard in the dark last night. She can barely get to the bathroom by herself. I cannot do that." "Mom," I whispered. Marlene stared at me. The betrayal on her face was absolute, as if I were the one who had emptied the accounts. "Fine," she spat. She threw the paper onto the floor. "Fine. Gang up on me. That is what you 2 always do. You want to make me the villain? Go ahead. I am done. I am done being the servant here. I am done being the punching bag for everyone's trauma." She stormed back to the guest room. We heard the violent sound of zippers, things being thrown into bags. 5 minutes later, she marched out, fully dressed, her purse slung over her shoulder. "I am leaving," she announced. "Do not call me until you are ready to apologize. I need to be where I am appreciated." She slammed the front door so hard the window pane rattled. The silence that followed was ringing. I heard her car start outside, the engine revving aggressively, and then the sound of tires fading away down the street. She did not take a child. She did not leave anyone helpless in a literal sense. Mark was in the kitchen, Grandpa was in the chair, but she had exited the family system with the abruptness of a power cord being yanked from the wall. I sat there, stunned. The air felt thin. Grandpa Harold did not chase her. He did not sigh. He bent down and picked up the bank statement from the floor. He smoothed it out on the table and made a note in his book. "I will start a pot of coffee," he said. Later that afternoon, Mark helped me into the shower. It was a logistical nightmare involving a plastic transfer bench and a detachable shower head. He got the water temperature right, placed the soap within reach, and then stepped out to give me privacy, closing the door softly. I sat on the white plastic bench, the water hitting my back. I looked down at my body. The bruising on my hip was turning a sickly yellow-green. My leg was atrophied, thinner than the other one. I looked at the tiles. The water mixed with the tears on my face. It wasn't a dramatic sob. It was a quiet, leaking despair. I wanted my mother, even knowing what she had done, even knowing she had lied and stolen and gaslit me. I wanted her to come back. I wanted her to burst through the door and wash my hair and tell me it was all a mistake. I wanted the mother from the Instagram post, the one who called me her warrior. I felt pathetic for wanting her. I felt weak. I hated myself for missing the woman who had just abandoned me because I asked a question about money. I sat there until the water turned cold. When I finally got dressed and shuffled back out to the living room, Grandpa was still there. He had organized the envelopes into stacks. He had made a sandwich and left half of it on a plate for me. He watched me struggle to get comfortable on the bed. He waited until I stopped moving. "She is not coming back tonight," he said. "I know," I said, staring at my hands. "I heard her on the phone last night," I confessed, the words tumbling out. "She said she was moving what was left. She said she was protecting herself." Grandpa nodded slowly. He did not look surprised. She has been drifting for a long time. Caroline. I suspected she was in trouble. I did not think she would do this, but people do strange things when they are cornered. I feel like I should be angrier, I said, my voice breaking. But I just feel scared, and I miss her. Is that crazy? She stole from me, and I miss her. Grandpa leaned forward. He rested his elbows on his knees and clasped his hands. It is not crazy, he said. It is instinct. She is your mother. You are wired to want her to be safe, and you are wired to want her to keep you safe. He looked me in the eye. But listen to me. Caroline, you can miss her and still protect yourself. Those two things can exist at the same time. You do not have to choose between loving her and stopping her from ruining you. He opened a folder he had brought with him. He pulled out a single sheet of paper. I cannot fix the leg, he said, and I cannot fix her. But I can stop the bleeding. I need you to sign this. What is it? I asked. Limited permission, he said. It authorizes me to speak to the insurance companies and the bank on your behalf. It does not give me control of your money. It just lets me find out where the holes are so we can plug them. I looked at the paper. It was a standard form, typed up on a typewriter, probably 20 years old. If I sign this, I said, it means I am admitting she is the enemy. No, Grandpa said. It means you are admitting you are an adult who needs to know the truth. I took the pen. My hand was shaking. I thought about the text message she had sent me right after she left. I can't be your punching bag. I thought about the final notice stamp. I thought about the silence in the house, which was peaceful, but also terrifying. I signed my name. Grandpa took the paper. He didn't smile. He just nodded, capped his pen, and put the notebook into his shirt pocket. Rest now, he said. Tomorrow is paper day. We find out what is really going on. He stood up and walked to the kitchen to pour the rest of the coffee down the sink. I watched him, a straight-backed old man in a flannel shirt, standing between me and the ruin of my life. I did not know it then, but he had already made the move. He was just waiting for the pieces to fall. The morning of the paper day was gray and relentless, the kind of weather that made the metal pins in my pelvis hum with a low, vibrating ache. Mark drove me to Grandpa Harold's house in complete silence. He had taken a personal day from work, sacrificing his vacation hours to transport me because I still could not drive. I sat in the reclined passenger seat, watching the telephone wires dip and rise against the slate sky, feeling like a parcel being delivered from one custodian to another. Grandpa lived in a small, brick bungalow, 3 towns over. It was a house built in the 1950s, stubborn and square, surrounded by a lawn that was trimmed with military precision. Inside, it smelled of lemon oil and old paper. He had set up his dining room as a command center. The lace tablecloth had been removed, replaced by a heavy vinyl protector. On top of that lay 3 distinct piles of documents, a calculator, and a pot of black coffee that looked thick enough to pave a driveway. I hobbled in on my crutches, the rubber tips squeaking on his hardwood floors. Every step was a negotiation between my brain and my body. Mark helped me into a chair that Grandpa had modified with 2 firm pillows to keep my hips level. Thank you, I said to Mark, avoiding his eyes. You can go. I will call you when we are done. Are you sure? Mark asked. He looked exhausted. His shirt was unironed, something that never would have happened before the accident. Go, I said, softer this time. Please, I just need to get this sorted. When the door clicked shut, the silence in the room settled like dust. Grandpa did not offer me coffee. He did not ask how I slept. He simply picked up a ruler and a black felt-tip pen. He had taped several sheets of graph paper together to form a long, horizontal scroll that stretched across the table. We are going to build a timeline, he said. He spoke the word timeline like it was a weapon. I watched him work. He started at the left side of the paper. He wrote the date of the accident, August 12th, beneath it, in small, precise block letters. He wrote, Impact, St. Jude's Hospital admission. Then he moved the ruler a fraction of an inch to the right. August 14th, pelvic reconstruction surgery. He looked at me over the rim of his glasses. I have the bank records from the joint account you shared with Marlene, he said, and the trust account statements. We are going to overlay the financial activity with the medical activity. I felt a flush of heat crawl up my neck. Do we have to do it like this? I asked. Can we not just see how much is missing and pay the bills? Grandpa ignored me. He picked up a bank statement. August 14th. He read aloud. While you were in surgery, a transfer was made from the emergency savings. $300. That is not much, I said quickly, defending a ghost. She probably needed gas or food. She was at the hospital all day. He moved the ruler. August 15th, he said. Transfer, $450. August 17th, you were moved to the step-down unit. Transfer, $600. August 20th, discharge planning meeting. Transfer, $800. He marked each one on the timeline with a red dot. As the graph progressed, a pattern emerged. The red dots clustered around the days when I was most incapacitated, when I was in the ICU. The withdrawals were daily. When I started physical therapy and was more alert, they slowed down. When I came home and was heavily medicated, they spiked again. It was not a looting, it was a siphoning. She had taken small enough bites that the balance never dropped precipitously enough to trigger a fraud alert. But over 6 weeks, she had drained nearly $9,000. I stared at the graph paper. The visual representation of the betrayal made it impossible to deny. It wasn't panic spending. It was rhythmic. It was calculated. Grandpa put the pen down. She had access to the family trust operating account. He said, Your grandmother set that up to help with maintenance on your house and medical emergencies. I stepped back from it 5 years ago because I thought Marlene was ready to handle the administration. He pulled a separate sheet of paper from a manila folder. She moved $4,000 from the trust on the day you came home, he said. I felt sick. The nausea rolled in my stomach, hot and acidic. I remembered that day. I remembered her fluffing my pillows. I remembered her taking photos for Instagram. I remembered her telling me that stress inhibited bone growth, while she was telling me to manifest wellness. She was transferring $4,000 out of my safety net. I hate this, I snapped, my voice cracking. I hate sitting here. I hate looking at this. Can we just stop? Grandpa looked at me. He did not flinch at my tone. We can stop, he said, but the bills will not stop, and she will not stop. I am 33 years old, I shouted, and the force of it sent a spike of pain through my hip that made me gasp. I slammed my hand on the table. I should not need my grandfather to audit my life. I should have known. I should have checked the apps. I let this happen. I was shaking. I was furious at Marlene, but I was more furious at myself. I had been so desperate for a mother that I had handed her the keys to my life the moment I got hurt. I had wanted to be taken care of so badly that I had made myself a victim twice. Grandpa reached across the table. He did not take my hand. He simply placed his hand on the graph paper, covering the red dots. You were unconscious. Caroline, he said, you were on morphine. You did not let this happen. You were survived. There is a difference. I put my head in my hands and breathed through the pain. I am sorry. I whispered. I am sorry, I yelled. It is fine, he said. Anger is useful. Shame is not. He stood up and walked to a filing cabinet in the corner of the room. It was an ancient metal beast, painted olive green. He pulled a thick file from the top drawer and brought it to the table. This is the trust document, he said. He opened it. The paper was heavy. Cream-colored bond. I made a move this morning, he said. Before you got here. I looked up. What kind of move? The trust has a clause, he said. Section 4, paragraph C. It states that the administrative trustee must act in the fiduciary best interest of the beneficiaries. If there is evidence of mismanagement or commingling of funds, the grantor, that is me, can appoint a successor trustee immediately to secure the assets. He slid a fresh document toward me. It was stamped with a logo I did not recognize. Lakebridge Fiduciary Services. I have transferred the administrative authority of the trust to Lakebridge. He said, They are a professional fiduciary office. They are neutral. They are cold. They follow the law, not feelings. I stared at the logo. It looked official. It looked final. Does she know? I asked. Not yet, he said. She will know the next time she tries to move money. Her access codes will not work. The account will be frozen to her. A wave of guilt crashed over me, drowning out the anger. I pictured my mother standing at a checkout counter. Her card declined. I pictured her embarrassed. I pictured her calling me, frantic. Grandpa, I said, my voice trembling. This feels aggressive. If we cut her off, she has nothing. She lives off that stipend. What if she cannot pay her rent? What if she gets evicted? I do not want to destroy her. I am not destroying her, he said. I am containing her. He pointed to a paragraph on the Lake Bridge document. Read this, he commanded. I leaned in. The suspended trustee may petition for reinstatement of access upon provision of a full accounting of disputed funds and completion of a financial literacy course. Emergency disbursements for living expenses may be requested through the case manager. She is not on the street. Grandpa said, if she needs rent, she can ask Lakebridge. She just has to show them the bill. She has to prove the money is going to a landlord, not into her pocket. It is a leash. I said, it is a guardrail, he corrected. She was driving off a cliff, Caroline, and she had you in the trunk. We spent the rest of the afternoon filling out forms. My hand cramped. My hip ached. I signed release after release, giving Lakebridge permission to audit the last 5 years of the trust. By the time Mark came to pick me up, the sky outside had turned a bruised purple. I felt lighter, but also hollow, as if I had just undergone another surgery, this one removing a part of my heart instead of a piece of bone. The explosion happened 2 days later. I was lying on the couch, icing my leg, when my phone rang. The screen lit up with her name, Mom. I stared at it, the ringtone, a cheerful marimba beat I had assigned to her years ago, sounded grotesque now. I let it ring 4 times. 5, then I picked it up. Hello? Caroline? Her voice was a shriek, distorted by bad reception and pure panic. You have to help me. Something is wrong with the bank. Harold has done something. He is stealing from me. She did not ask how I was. She did not ask about my physical therapy. Mom, slow down, I said, keeping my voice steady, just as Grandpa had instructed. I went to the grocery store. She cried. I was buying vitamins. The card was declined. It said, Contact Administrator. I called the bank and they said my name is no longer on the authorized list. They said I have to call some place called Lakebridge. She paused, gasping for breath. He is trying to control me. Caroline, he has always been jealous of our bond. He wants to starve me out. You have to call him. You have to tell him to fix this right now. I closed my eyes. I could hear the traffic in the background on her end. She was calling from a parking lot. I know about Lakebridge. Mom, I said. The silence on the line was instant and terrifying. You know, she whispered. I saw the transfers. Mom, Grandpa and I went through the statements. You took $9,000 in 6 weeks. That is my money, she screamed, the victimhood vanishing instantly, replaced by rage. That trust is for the family. I am family. I needed it. You took it from the emergency fund. I said, You took it while I was in surgery. I was going to put it back, she yelled. God, you are so petty. You count every penny like a miser. I was borrowing it. I am your mother. Do I not deserve support? Do I not deserve to be happy? The logic was so twisted, so circular, that I felt dizzy trying to follow it. Lakebridge is handling it now, I said. If you need money for rent or food, you can call them. They will pay the bill directly. I do not want to talk to some stranger, she screamed. I want my money. You ungrateful little... I hung up. I dropped the phone on the cushion next to me and stared at the ceiling. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I had done it. I had said no. It felt terrible. It felt like I had just cut off my own arm. Mark walked into the room. He had heard the shouting. He sat down at the end of the couch and put a hand on my ankle. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I said. "I am really not." The next morning, Grandpa picked me up for a meeting. We were going to see a lawyer he knew, a woman named Dana Kilmer. She was not a family friend. She was a specialist in estate litigation. Her office was in a glass building downtown, the kind of place with hushed elevators and thick carpet that absorbed the sound of my crutches. Dana Kilmer was a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair, cut into a sharp bob, and glasses that looked like they cost more than my first car. She sat us down in a conference room that smelled of leather. "I have reviewed the trust reassignment," she said. Her voice was calm, devoid of the emotional static that surrounded my mother. "Harold, your move was legally sound. By invoking the competency clause, you have effectively placed the assets in a lockbox." She turned to me. "Caroline, I want you to understand what this means. This is not a lawsuit. Yet, this is a pressure valve." "What do you mean?" I asked. "If your mother cooperates with Lakebridge, if she submits her receipts and agrees to the financial literacy course, the control can be returned to a shared status in 6 months. This is reversible. We are not stripping her of her inheritance. We are asking for accountability." She slid a file across the table. "However," she said, "we have found something troubling in the preliminary audit of the transfers she made." I braced myself. "Did she spend it on gambling?" I asked. "Drugs?" Dana shook her head. "No. The transfers were all sent to the same entity, a limited liability company registered in Arizona." She opened the file and pointed to a name on the ledger, the Larkwell Renewal Collective. I frowned. "What is that? A spa?" "We are not sure," Dana said, "but the frequency of the payments suggests a subscription model or a tiered payment plan. She was sending them varying amounts, 300, 500, then 2,000. It looks like she was buying levels." "Levels of what?" I asked. "That is what we need to find out," Grandpa said. He looked at me. "She was not stealing to survive. Caroline, she was stealing to buy something." That night, I sat in bed with my laptop. Mark was asleep beside me. The house was quiet. I typed the words into the search bar. Larkwell Renewal Collective. The website that loaded was sleek, minimalist, and expensive. The background was a soft, looping video of a sunrise over a desert canyon. The font was thin and elegant. "Unlock your true design." The headline read, "Shed the weight of your history. Step into the abundance you deserve." I scrolled down. It was a word salad of wellness buzzwords and corporate coaching speak. They promised quantum emotional shifting and wealth mindset activation. There were testimonials from people who claimed that Larkwell had cured their depression, doubled their income, and saved their marriages. Before Larkwell, I was living in a scarcity loop. One woman wrote, "Now, I am a sovereign architect of my own reality." It sounded scripted. It sounded like a cult, but a corporate one, the kind that held seminars in hotel ballrooms and charged $5,000 for a weekend retreat. I clicked on the Our Community tab. There was a gallery of photos from a recent summit in Scottsdale. People were wearing white linen, smiling with their eyes closed, their hands raised to the sky. I scrolled through the faces, and then I stopped. In the third row of a group photo, standing near the edge of the frame, was Marlene. She looked younger. Her hair was lighter, styled in loose waves. She was wearing a white dress I had never seen before, but it was her face that chilled me. She was smiling, but it was not her smile. It was a wide, vacant, ecstatic expression, the look of someone who has been hollowed out and filled up with something else. She looked happy. She looked happier than she had ever looked at my college graduation, or my engagement party, or sitting by my hospital bed. I zoomed in on the photo. Around her neck, she was wearing a lanyard. I could just make out the text on the badge. Marlene Rogers, Level 3 Aspirant. I sat back against the headboard. The pieces clicked together with a sickening clarity. The vague messages about positive energy, the obsession with me manifesting wellness, the criticism of my stress levels. She wasn't just being difficult, she was regurgitating a script. She had stolen my money not to pay her bills, but to pay for her ascent. She was buying enlightenment with the money meant to fix my broken bones. I looked at the date of the photo. It was dated August 15th, the day after my surgery. While surgeons were putting screws into my pelvis, my mother was in Arizona, wearing white linen, smiling like a stranger, and writing a check from my savings account to a group that told her she was a sovereign architect. I closed the laptop. I did not cry. The tears were gone, replaced by a cold, hard knot in the center of my chest. I picked up my phone and opened the text thread with her. The last message was her screaming at me in all caps, "You are choosing money over blood." I typed a response. I did not send it. I just typed it to see how it looked. I am choosing truth. I deleted the draft. I turned off the light. For the first time since the accident, I did not want my mother to come back and comfort me. I did not want her to fix anything. I wanted to know what level 3 meant. I wanted to know what Larkwell was. Grandpa was right. This was not a family dispute. This was an excavation. I lay in the dark, listening to the wind rattle the window pane. I made a decision then. I would not chase her emotionally anymore. I would not beg for her love. I would chase the money. I would chase the truth. And if the truth destroyed the version of my mother I had tried so hard to keep alive in my head, then so be it. The pain in my leg was still there, a constant companion, but for the first time, it felt like fuel. I was awake, and I was ready to see what was underneath the floorboards. The waiting room of the pain management clinic was painted a soft, inoffensive blue, the kind of color chosen by a committee to suggest tranquility without promising a cure. I sat in a chair that was slightly too low for my hips, staring at a poster of a human spine. The vertebrae were labeled in crisp black text, turning the source of my agony into an anatomy lesson. The doctor, a man named Dr. Aris who smelled of peppermint and latex, had been kind but blunt. "Recovery is not a straight line. Caroline," he had said, reviewing my latest scans. "The bone is knitting, but the nerves are remembering. You have to be patient with the signals your body is sending you." I nodded, pretending I understood. But the truth was, my body was sending me signals that felt less like biology and more like a horror movie. My left leg felt like it was wrapped in barbed wire even when nothing was touching it. My lower back seized up if I sat for more than 20 minutes. When I walked out to the parking lot, leaning heavily on my crutches, the sun was blinding. Mark had pulled the car around to the front, the engine idling. I was halfway to the door when a delivery truck sped through the lot, taking the corner too fast. The tires screeched. It was a short, sharp sound, lasting maybe half a second, but in my brain, time stopped. The sound expanded, filling my skull, replacing the sunlight with the memory of crushing metal and shattering glass. My chest locked. I could not breathe. I dropped one crutch and grabbed the side mirror of a parked sedan to keep from falling, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I was back in the intersection. I was spinning. I was waiting for the impact. "Caroline!" Mark's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I felt his hands on my shoulders, grounding me. "Breathe," he said. "You are here. You are in the parking lot. Look at me." I gasped, sucking in air that tasted like exhaust fumes. The panic receded slowly, leaving me trembling and humiliated. I was 33 years old, and a noise had reduced me to a shaking mess in public. "I am okay." I lied, my voice thin. "You are not," Mark said gently, helping me into the car. "But you will be on the drive home." I stared out the window, watching the telephone poles whip by. I had been so focused on the financial wreckage my mother had left behind that I had almost forgotten about the physical wreckage she had left me in. I was broken, and the person who should have been helping me put the pieces back together was currently somewhere in Arizona, ascending to a new level of consciousness on my dime. Grandpa Harold was waiting at the house when we arrived. He had a key now. He was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of manila folders and a fresh pot of coffee. He looked at my pale face and the way I was holding my side, but he did not comment. We sat down. The silence in the kitchen was heavy. I had a panic attack. I said, breaking the quiet, in the parking lot, because a truck made a noise. Grandpa nodded slowly. The body keeps the score. He said. He pushed a folder toward me. I have been thinking, he said, about Marlene. I stiffened. What about her? I told you I suspected she was in trouble, he said, but I did not tell you the extent of it. He took a sip of his black coffee. She has been borrowing money from me for 10 years. Caroline, small amounts at first, 500 here, 1,000 there. She always had a reason, car repairs, a security deposit on a new apartment because the old one had mold, a course she wanted to take to become a real estate agent, then a nutritionist, then a life coach. I stared at him. 10 years? I asked. Why did you never tell me? Because I wanted you to have a mother. He said simply, I thought if I plugged the holes, she would eventually stabilize. I thought she just needed a win. He looked down at his hands, which were clasped on the table. They were strong hands, weathered by years of engineering work. But they looked tired today. She was addicted to fresh starts. He said, she believed that the next town, the next job, the next group of friends would be the one that finally made her feel whole. I enabled that. I paid for the fresh starts because I was afraid of what would happen if she stopped running. And now she is running with my money. I said bitterly, no. Grandpa said, this is different. Before, she was running toward a vague idea of happiness. Now, she is running toward a specific ideology, this Larkwell thing. It is not just another yoga retreat. He tapped the folder. I did some digging into her employment history, or rather, her lack of it. She has not held a payroll job in 3 years. Then how has she been paying rent? I asked. She has not. He said, I have. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My mother, who constantly bragged about her independence, who posted memes about strong women building their own empires, had been living on an allowance from her father while stealing from her daughter. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a voicemail notification. The number was unknown. I picked it up. My stomach tightened. Who is it? Mark asked. Walking into the kitchen with an ice pack for my hip. I do not know, I said. I put the phone on speaker. The voice was female, breathless, and high-pitched, with a strange, forced cadence, as if she were reading from a script, but trying to sound casual. Hello? Caroline, you do not know me, but I am a friend of Marlene's. I am calling from a place of love and light to tell you that you need to stop. We know you are poking around. We know about the trust. You need to understand that Marlene finally chose herself. She finally cut the cord of toxicity. Do not mess with Larkwell. We protect our own. Release the attachment, Caroline, or the universe will release it for you. The line went dead. Mark stared at the phone. Did she just threaten you with the universe? He asked, his voice incredulous. Grandpa did not smile. He looked grim. That was not a threat from the universe, he said. That was a warning from a highly organized group. He opened the folder on the table. We requested the bank records through the legal discovery process Lakebridge initiated. He said, look at the signature card for the account Marlene tried to access. I looked at the photocopy. It was a standard bank form, but on the line for occupation. Marlene had not written unemployed or freelancer. She had written program coordinator, Larkwell Renewal Collective. She is not just a customer, I whispered. She is working for them. Grandpa nodded. She is recruiting, he said, which means she is not just a victim of a scam. She is part of the mechanism. The next few days were a blur of obsessive research. I stopped doing my physical therapy exercises. Instead of stretching my hip, I spent hours on forums, digging for information about Larkwell. I printed out articles. I made charts. I connected names with red string in my mind. Trying to find the man named Elliot Vance who had appeared on the beneficiary change form. Mark came home one evening to find me surrounded by paper. My eyes red from staring at the screen. I had not showered in 2 days. Caroline, he said, putting his bag down. I found something. I said, holding up a printout. Larkwell owns shell companies in Nevada. They buy real estate in distressed markets and turn them into wellness sanctuaries. Mark walked over and gently closed the laptop. "Stop," he said. "I cannot stop," I said, reaching for the computer. "I have to find out where the money went." "You are not looking for the money," Mark said. "You are looking for a reason." I froze. "What?" "You are trying to find a reason why she did this that does not involve her just not caring about you," Mark said quietly. "You want it to be a cult. You want it to be brainwashing, because if it is brainwashing, then she is still your mom underneath." Tears pricked my eyes. I hated him for being right. "She is my mom," I whispered. "She left you." "Caroline," he said. "She left you in a wheelchair and took your savings. You are becoming consumed by this investigation because it is easier than grieving. But you have to grieve. You have to heal. You cannot let her break your mind the way the accident broke your body." I looked at him. I looked at the piles of paper. I realized I was doing exactly what Marlene did. I was looking for a fresh start, a new narrative, something to distract me from the pain. "I will stop for tonight," I said. Mark kissed my forehead. "Good," he said, "because you have a visitor tomorrow." The visitor was a woman named Kendra Shaw. I had found her on a support forum for families of cult survivors. She had agreed to meet me at a coffee shop 3 towns over, far away from any place Marlene might frequent. Mark drove me. I hobbled into the coffee shop, feeling exposed. Kendra was sitting in a booth in the back, facing the door. She was younger than me, maybe 28, with short, chopped hair and a nervous energy that made her tap her fingers against her cup. "Caroline?" she asked. "Yes," I said. Sliding into the booth, Kendra looked at my crutches. "Larkwell?" she asked. "My mother," I said. Kendra nodded. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick binder. "I was in for 2 years," she said. "I reached level 4. I gave them $40,000, my inheritance, my 401k. I even sold my car." "How do they do it?" I asked. "How do they get people to do that?" "They do not ask for the money," Kendra said. "They ask for the commitment." She opened the binder to a page marked with a sticky note. It was a document titled "The Sovereign Pledge." "Read this," she said. I looked at the text. It was dense, written in a flowery pseudo-legal script. "I hereby declare my intent to sever all ties with energy vampires, resource drains, and historical anchors that prevent my ascension. I acknowledge that true abundance requires the unlocking of stagnant assets. I pledge to redirect my resources toward the mission of global renewal, understanding that those who do not support my growth are actively working against my survival." "It is a contract," I said. "It is a permission slip," Kendra corrected. "They tell you that your family, your friends, anyone who questions Larkwell, is an energy vampire. They tell you that money sitting in a savings account is stagnant energy. They say that by keeping it there, you are blocking the flow of the universe, so you move it, you liquidate it, you give it to them to activate it." She looked at me, her eyes intense. "When your mother took your money, Caroline, she did not think she was stealing. She thought she was saving you." "Saving me?" I asked. "By removing the stagnant energy from your life." Kendra said, in their twisted logic, "She was doing you a favor. She was releasing you from the burden of wealth so you could focus on healing. And if you got angry, that just proved you were a vampire. It proved you were attached to the material world." I felt sick. It was a perfect, hermetically sealed system of insanity. Everything I did to defend myself was proof that I was the enemy. "Did you know a woman named Marlene Rogers?" I asked. Kendra shook her head. "No, but I knew Elliot Vance." My heart skipped a beat. "Who is he?" "He is the closer," Kendra said. "He is the one they bring in when you have assets that are hard to move. Trusts, real estate. He is not a guru. He is a lawyer, a disbarred one." She closed the binder. "If your mother is working with Vance, she is in deep, and she is not coming out unless she is forced." I went back to Grandpa's house that afternoon. I needed to see him. I needed to understand the history he had alluded to. He was in the living room, watching the news. I sat down on the sofa and pulled a heavy photo album from the shelf. It was an old one, with sticky magnetic pages that had yellowed with time. I flipped through the years. There was me as a baby, me at graduation, and there was Marlene. I looked at the pictures of her, in the ones where she was alone, or with me. She looked radiant, chaotic, maybe, but alive. But then I found a series of photos from a Christmas party 10 years ago. Grandpa was in the frame, in every single photo where Grandpa Harold was present. Marlene's face was tight, her smile was brittle, her eyes were flat. She was leaning away from him, her body language screaming resentment. I realized then that the power struggle between them was older than I was. She hated him. She hated his stability, his rules, his quiet judgment. She hated that she needed him, and Larkwell had given her a weapon to finally cut him out. Grandpa turned off the TV. "You saw Kendra?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "She told me about the vampires. She told me about Elliot Vance." Grandpa nodded. "I know about Vance," he said. "Lakebridge found his name on the attempted beneficiary change." He leaned forward. "Caroline, I need to tell you the rest of the plan." "The rest?" I asked. "I told you I made one move," he said. "I told you I transferred the administrative authority to Lakebridge to stop the bleeding. But I did something else." He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "When I set up the transfer of authority, I flagged the account activity as suspicious within the Lakebridge internal system. I did not just lock the door, I sounded the alarm. I stared at him. What does that mean? It means that Lakebridge is legally required to conduct a forensic audit." He said, "They are not just looking at the balance, they are looking at the recipient. They are obligated to verify that the funds are being used for the benefit of the trust. If they find that the money is going to a fraudulent entity, or if they find that Marlene was coerced, they have to report it." "Report it to who?" I asked. "To the State Regulatory Board," he said, "and potentially to the district attorney." I felt a cold chill. "You are trying to get her arrested." I said, "No," Grandpa said firmly. "I am trying to get the organization exposed. If Marlene is just a victim, she will be a witness. But if she is an accomplice, if she is a program coordinator like you said, then she goes down with them." I finished. Grandpa looked at me with infinite sadness. "She made choices. Caroline, I can protect her from poverty. I can protect her from homelessness, but I cannot protect her from the consequences of her own actions. Not anymore." I wrestled with the thought. My mother, in a courtroom. My mother, facing charges. Part of me wanted to scream at Grandpa to stop, to undo it, to let her go, but then I remembered the text. "I can't be your punching bag." I remembered the voicemail. Marlene finally chose herself. I remembered the screeching tires and the panic attack in the parking lot. She had abandoned me. She had chosen a group of strangers over her own daughter. She had looked at my broken body and seen an opportunity to unlock resources. I closed the photo album. "Okay," I said quietly. "Let the audit happen." The email arrived 2 days later. I was sitting at my kitchen table, paying the few bills I could manage with my disability check. The notification pinged on my laptop. Subject: Urgent. Trust account irregularities. Lakebridge Fiduciary Services. My hand hovered over the mouse. I clicked it. "Dear Ms. Rogers, following the administrative reassignment of the Rogers Family Trust, our compliance department has completed a preliminary review of the transaction history and beneficiary data. We have identified significant irregularities that extend beyond the unauthorized withdrawals previously discussed. There is evidence of a systematic attempt to restructure the trust's underlying assets, involving third-party entities that appear to be linked to the former trustee. We need you and Mr. Weller to come to our office immediately. The scope of this situation is larger than we anticipated, and it requires your immediate legal attention. Sincerely, David Thorne, Senior Compliance Officer." I read the email twice. Systematic attempt to restructure. She wasn't just siphoning cash. She wasn't just stealing $500 here and there. She had been trying to move the whole thing. She had been trying to give the entire trust, the house, the savings, the future, to Larkwell. I looked up. Mark was standing in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of tea. He saw my face. "What is it?" he asked. I pushed the laptop toward him. "Grandpa's trap worked," I said, and it caught something big. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't relief. It wasn't joy. It was the grim satisfaction of a soldier who finally sees the enemy clearly. The fog was gone. My mother wasn't just a confused woman who made a mistake. She was a soldier for the other side. I picked up my phone and called Grandpa. He answered on the first ring. I got the email. He said, "I know." I said, "When do we go?" "Tomorrow morning." He said, "Get your rest." "Caroline, we are going to war." I hung up the phone. I looked at the crutches leaning against the wall. I looked at the scars on my hip. I was not just a victim of a car accident anymore. I was a plaintiff, and I was ready. The conference room at Lakebridge Fiduciary Services was a study in aggressive neutrality. The carpet was a tight, industrial gray loop that absorbed the sound of my crutches, and the table was a slab of polished mahogany that looked long enough to land a small aircraft on. The air conditioning was set to a temperature that I suspected was designed to keep people alert and slightly uncomfortable. I sat on one side of the table. Flanked by Grandpa Harold and Dana Kilmer, opposite us sat David Thorne, the senior compliance officer who had sent the email. He was a man who looked like he had been born wearing a tie. His movements were economical, his expression utterly devoid of judgment or pity. "Thank you for coming in on such short notice," Thorne said. He did not smile. He opened a leather portfolio and extracted a single document, sliding it across the polished wood toward Grandpa. I leaned in, fighting the throb of pain in my hip that the hard chair was exacerbating. "What are we looking at?" Grandpa asked. He put on his reading glasses, his hands steady. Thorne folded his hands on the table. "When we took over the administration of the Rogers Family Trust, we initiated a freeze on all outgoing transfers," he said. "That is standard procedure. However, we also conducted a review of pending administrative requests filed in the 30 days prior to the handover." He pointed a manicured finger at the document. "This is a change of beneficiary form," Thorne said. "It was submitted electronically on August 28th. I did the math in my head. August 28th. 2 weeks after the accident, I had been in the rehabilitation center, learning how to lift my leg 2 inches off the mattress without screaming. I looked at the form. It was filled out in my mother's handwriting. I recognized the loops of her G's and the slant of her T's in the section marked Primary Beneficiary, where my name had been since I was 18 years old. There was a black line drawn through Caroline Rogers, beneath it, in clear block letters. She had written, "The Larkwell Renewal Collective, care of Elliot Vance." The room seemed to tilt. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with a sound like angry wasps. "She tried to cut you out," Grandpa said. His voice was very quiet. It was the sound of a heavy door closing in a deep cellar. "She attempted to redesignate the entirety of the trust's corpus." Thorne corrected. The request included the liquidation of the investment portfolio and the transfer of the deed to the family home. I felt the bile rise in my throat. This was not borrowing. This was not skimming a few $1,000s to pay for a seminar or a wealth activation course. This was an annihilation. "She was going to sell the house?" I whispered. "My house?" "Technically, the house belongs to the trust," Thorne said. "But yes, if this form had been processed, the trust would have been dissolved, and the assets would have been transferred to Mr. Vance." "Who is Elliot Vance?" Grandpa asked. "We are currently investigating that." Thorne said, "But the initial background check suggests he is the chief financial officer of the entity known as Larkwell." I sat back, the breath leaving my lungs in a rush. I stared at the water pitcher in the center of the table. "She wasn't just running away," I said. "She wasn't just panicked. She was erasing me." I thought about the timeline. While I was lying in a hospital bed, wondering why my mother wasn't bringing me fresh clothes or answering her phone. She was filling out paperwork to give my inheritance to a man I had never met. She was going to sell the roof over my head to buy her way into a circle of people who told her she was a god. She was engineering a new life, and she was financing it with my survival. Dana Kilmer reached out and placed a hand on my forearm. Her touch was professional. Grounding, Caroline, listen to me, she said. This form was never processed. It was flagged because it required a second signature, Harold's, which she forged. But the forgery was clumsy. The bank put a hold on it. The assets are safe. Safe, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. The money is safe. But my mother tried to rob me. This changes the legal landscape, Dana said, turning to Grandpa. This is no longer a matter of mismanagement. This is attempted grand larceny and fraud. We have enough here to file criminal charges if we choose to go that route. I looked at Grandpa. His face was gray. He looked older than I had ever seen him. The lines around his mouth etched deep with a sorrow that went beyond anger. No police, he said. Not yet. Harold, Dana warned, this is serious. If we do not file, we look weak. We are not weak, Grandpa said. We are careful. He looked at me. If we arrest her, she becomes a martyr to those people. They will spin it. They will say the toxic family is using the state to crush her spirit. It will validate every lie they have told her. He tapped the table with his knuckle. We do this through the civil courts. We force her to answer questions under oath. We expose the organization, not just the woman, but she tried to take everything. I said, my voice shaking. She tried to leave me with nothing. I know. Grandpa said, and we will make sure she never has the power to do that again. But we will not humiliate her in town. We do not drag her out in handcuffs for the neighbors to see. We do this right. I looked at him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn something down. I wanted to drive to wherever she was and shake her until her teeth rattled. But looking at Grandpa, I realized he was doing something harder than rage. He was holding a boundary. He was refusing to let her chaos turn us into monsters. We do this right, I repeated. We left the office in silence. The city outside was bustling, indifferent to the fact that my family had just been autopsy on a mahogany table. The following Tuesday, I sat in a therapist's office that smelled of vanilla and dust. It was my third session. I had started going because Mark insisted, and because I was waking up screaming 3 nights a week. My therapist, a woman named Dr. Evans, watched me as I recounted the meeting at Lakebridge. I told her about the beneficiary form. I told her about Elliot Vance. I told her about the rage that felt like a hot stone in my stomach. You are angry about the money, Doctor, Evans said. Of course I'm angry about the money, I snapped. It is my future. It is my safety. Is it just the money? She asked. I stopped. I looked at the tissue box on the table. She tried to replace me. I said, she put a stranger's name on the line where mine used to be. She literally crossed me out. And what does that mean to you? Doctor, Evans asked. It means she does not love me. I said, it means I am disposable. I started to cry then. Ugly. Heaving sobs that hurt my ribs. I spent my whole life trying to be the easy one. I choked out. Grandpa was the hard one. He was the strict one. So I tried to be the soft place for her. I listened to her drama. I loaned her money. I validated her feelings. I thought if I was good enough, if I was successful enough, she would finally settle down. I thought I could save her. You were parenting her. Doctor, Evans said gently. I was trying to buy a mother. I said, I was paying for it with my patience, and my time, and my energy. And when I got hurt, when I stopped paying, she left. I wiped my face with the rough tissue. I am mourning her. I said, but she is not dead. You are mourning the fantasy. Doctor, Evans said, you are mourning the hope that if you just did everything right, she would eventually become the mother you needed. That is a death. Caroline, it is the death of a dream. I sat with that for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked. I have to let her go. I said, you do not have to forgive her. Doctor, Evans said, but you have to accept that she is who she is. You cannot extract safety from an unsafe person. The opportunity to test that acceptance came sooner than I expected. 2 days later, Mark came home with a flyer he had found at a coffee shop in the next town over. He put it on the counter without a word. It was a glossy postcard. The Larkwell Renewal Collective presents An Evening of Awakening. The date was tonight. The location was the Renton Community Hall, a generic event space usually used for weddings and Rotary Club meetings. She will be there, Mark said. I looked at the flyer. It promised testimonials of transformation and introduction to abundance. I want to go, I said. Caroline, Grandpa said from the living room. He had been coming over every evening to help with dinner. You do not need to do this. I do. I said, I need to see her. I need to see it with my own eyes. I am not going to yell. I am not going to make a scene. I need to see the enemy. Grandpa looked at me. He saw the set of my jaw. Then I am driving, he said. We arrived at the community hall at 7 o'clock. The parking lot was full of cars that looked too expensive for the neighborhood. Inside, the hall had been transformed. White drapes covered the beige walls. Ambient music, a loop of chimes and synthesized strings, filled the air. The smell of sage and expensive perfume was overwhelming. There were about 50 people there. They were milling around, holding cups of herbal tea, smiling with that same vacant, beatific expression I had seen in the photos. And there she was. Marlene was standing near a table stacked with books and pamphlets. She was wearing a white silk blouse and trousers that flowed like water. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek chignon. She looked younger. She looked polished. She looked radiant. I stood by the door, leaning on my crutches. Mark was on my left, Grandpa on my right. She saw us. For a second, her mask slipped. A flicker of annoyance, or perhaps fear, crossed her face, but it was gone instantly, replaced by a smooth, professional welcoming smile. She said something to the person she was talking to, touched their arm gently, and walked over to us. She did not rush. She moved with a deliberate, gliding grace. Hello, Caroline, she said. Her voice was lower, calmer than I remembered. Hello, Harold, Mom, I said. She looked at my crutches, then at my face. There was no pity in her eyes. There was a detachment so profound it felt like a physical wall. I sensed you might come, she said. There has been a lot of negative energy directed at me lately. I could feel the blockage. You stole my money, I said. It wasn't a scream. It was a statement of fact. Marlene sighed. A small, patient sound. We have different definitions of ownership. She said, you are clinging to old narratives of possession. I was liberating resources to serve a higher purpose. You tried to sell the house. Grandpa said. His voice was gravel. You forged my signature. I was acting as a steward of the future, Marlene said, turning to him. You are stuck in the past. Dad, you hoard. You control. Larkwell is about flow. She looked back at me. I am happy. Caroline, can you not see that? For the first time in my life, I am surrounded by people who see my true potential. Why can you not be happy for me? Because you abandoned me in a wheelchair. I said, I was in pain. I was scared. And you left. Marlene tilted her head. I did not leave you, she said. I gave you space to find your own strength. She stepped closer, her eyes locking onto mine. Your accident was not an accident, Caroline. It was a manifestation. You called that trauma into your life because you needed to be broken open. You needed to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. I stared at her. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. She was taking the worst moment of my life, the moment that had shattered my bones and my spirit, and she was twisting it into a lesson that I had asked for. She was absolving herself of all guilt by blaming the victim. Your story is your responsibility, she said, reciting a slogan. I could not interfere with your lesson. It would have stunted your growth. I felt a coldness spread through my chest, extinguishing the last spark of the daughter who wanted her mother back. Doctor, Evans was right. The mother I wanted did not exist. This woman, this radiant, empty vessel standing in front of me, was a stranger. You are sick, I said. Marlene smiled, a beatific, terrifying smile. "I am healed," she said, "and I hope one day you will be too." She turned to walk away. "We are not done," Grandpa said. Before he could take a step, a man stepped in front of him. He was large, wearing a black t-shirt with the Larkwell logo, a stylized sunburst, on the chest. He had a thick neck and eyes that were not smiling. "The event is for members and guests only," the man said. His voice was a low rumble. "If you are not open to the message, you need to leave." Grandpa looked at the man. He did not back down. He did not raise his voice. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out his notebook and pen. "What is your full name?" Grandpa asked. The man blinked, confused by the reaction. "Excuse me? Your name?" Grandpa repeated, clicking the pen. "And the mailing address of the organization you represent. I am collecting data for the subpoena." The man puffed up his chest, trying to loom over Grandpa. "You need to walk away, old man. You are disturbing the peace." "I am the peace," Grandpa said calmly. "You are the disturbance. Now, name?" He held the pen poised over the paper. He looked at the man with the bored, expectant expression of a building inspector finding a code violation. The man hesitated. He looked at Marlene, who was watching from a few feet away. The intimidation wasn't working. Grandpa wasn't playing by the rules of a street fight. He was playing by the rules of a deposition. He was turning the physical threat into a bureaucratic one. The man scowled. "Get out," he muttered. But he stepped back. Grandpa closed his notebook. "We are leaving," he said. "Not because you told us to, but because we have seen enough." He turned to me. "Ready? Caroline?" I looked at Marlene one last time. She was already turning back to her table, adjusting a stack of books, her face composing itself back into the mask of serenity. She did not look back at me. "I am ready," I said. We walked out into the cool night air. The door of the community hall closed behind us, muffling the synthesized music. My hands were shaking on my crutches. Mark opened the car door for me. "Are you okay?" he asked. "No," I said. "That was horrific." Grandpa got into the driver's seat. He didn't start the car immediately. He sat with his hands on the wheel, staring into the dark. "She is gone," he said softly. "The Marlene we knew. There is not much left of her." I realized then what his one move had really been. It wasn't just about the trust. It was about creating a structure where her chaos couldn't touch us. He had forced the truth into the open. He had made it impossible for her to hide behind vague excuses or emotional manipulation. Inside that hall, Marlene had tried to control the narrative. She had tried to make me feel small, but Grandpa had refused to engage with her insanity. He had simply asked for a name. He had reduced the cult's power to data points. We drove home in silence, but it wasn't the heavy, confused silence of the first few weeks. It was the silence of clarity. When we pulled into the driveway, my phone rang. It was Dana Kilmer. I answered it, putting it on speaker so Grandpa could hear. "Dana? I have an update," Dana said. Her voice was brisk, energized. "We served the subpoena on the bank records this morning. We just got the initial batch of transaction data." "And?" Grandpa asked. "It is bigger than we thought," Dana said. "Marlene is not just a coordinator. The account she tried to transfer the trust assets to, it is a funnel. We found wire transfers going from that account to 4 other shell companies, and we found names." "What kind of names?" I asked. "Other families," Dana said. "We found a pattern. Larkwell targets people in crisis, medical crisis. Specifically, we have identified at least 10 other families who had assets liquidated under similar circumstances." She paused. "This is not a civil dispute anymore. Caroline, this is a class action waiting to happen. And because Marlene's signature is on the intake forms for 3 of those families, she is going to be named as a primary defendant." I closed my eyes. "What happens next?" I asked. "We go to court," Dana said. "A formal hearing. The judge has granted an emergency motion for discovery. Marlene will be deposed. She will have to answer questions under oath." "Thank you, Dana," Grandpa said. He hung up the phone. He turned to me in the dark car. The dashboard lights cast a green glow on his face. "She wanted to be a leader," he said. "Now she is going to lead the investigation right to their door." I looked at the house, my house, the house she had tried to sell. I felt a strange, cold strength settling into my bones. The grief was still there, but the fear was gone. I knew what I had to do. I had to stop her, not to save her, that was impossible, but to stop her from doing to anyone else what she had done to me. I opened the car door. "Help me up," I said to Mark. "I have a statement to write." The night before the hearing, I sat at my dining room table with a yellow legal pad, trying to write a sentence that did not make me want to vomit. The house was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. Mark had gone to bed an hour ago. Knowing that I needed to be alone with my ghosts, I wrote, "My name is Caroline Rogers, and I am the beneficiary of the Rogers Family Trust." I crossed it out. It sounded too formal, too detached. I wrote, "My mother, Marlene Rogers, took advantage of my incapacity following a motor vehicle accident." I stared at the words, "my mother." They looked alien on the page. In the legal briefs Dana Kilmer had filed, she was referred to as the respondent or the former trustee. But here, in the privacy of my kitchen, she was still the woman who had taught me how to braid my hair. She was the woman who used to sing Fleetwood Mac songs while cooking spaghetti. She was the person I had called first when I got my first job, and my engagement ring, and even when I woke up in the hospital. The fear that gripped me wasn't about losing the case. The evidence Grandpa and I had compiled was overwhelming. The fear was about what would happen after I said her name out loud in a room full of strangers. I was terrified that by telling the truth, I would be severing the last, thin thread connecting us. I was terrified that once I became her accuser, I could never again be her daughter. I looked at the crutches leaning against the wall. The rubber tips were worn down. I had been using them for 8 weeks. 8 weeks of learning how to navigate a world that wasn't built for broken people. I picked up the pen again. I trusted her. I wrote, and she used that trust to buy a new life. I put the pen down. That was the truth. And tomorrow, I had to say it to a judge. The morning of the hearing was brisk and overcast. The courthouse was a brutalist structure of concrete and glass, designed to make everyone who entered feel small. Grandpa picked me up at 8 o'clock sharp. He was wearing his only suit, a charcoal gray wool number that smelled of cedar and mothballs. He looked distinguished, but tired. The skin under his eyes was papery. We met Dana Kilmer in the lobby. She was wearing a crimson blazer that looked like armor. "I have news," she said, leaning in close so the security guards wouldn't hear. "Good or bad?" Grandpa asked. "Complicated," Dana said. "We received a disclosure from the Lakebridge compliance team late last night. It turns out the Rogers Family Trust is not the only account that has raised flags in their system." I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Lakebridge manages thousands of trusts," Dana explained as we moved toward the metal detectors. "Their algorithm picked up a pattern of transfers to Larkwell-affiliated entities from 3 other accounts under their supervision. All of them involved beneficiaries who were either elderly or incapacitated. It is a harvesting operation," Grandpa said grimly. "Exactly," Dana said. "And because of that, the state banking regulators have opened an informal inquiry. They are watching this hearing. Caroline, we are not just fighting for your house anymore. We are providing the first on-the-record testimony for a much larger investigation." I swallowed hard. The weight of the moment pressed down on me. I wasn't just a daughter trying to get her savings back. I was the tip of the spear. We entered the hearing room. It was smaller than I expected, with wood-paneled walls and rows of empty benches. At the front, sitting at the respondent's table, was Marlene. She was not alone. Beside her sat a man I didn't recognize, a lawyer with slicked-back hair and a suit that looked too shiny under the fluorescent lights. Marlene was wearing a navy blue dress, modest and conservative. She looked like a schoolteacher. She looked respectable. She did not look at me. She kept her eyes fixed on a point somewhere above the judge's bench. The proceedings began with a dry recitation of facts. The judge, a woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, reviewed the petition to permanently remove Marlene as trustee. Then, Marlene's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor," he began, his voice smooth and oily. "This petition is a tragic overreaction born of family trauma. The petitioner, Miss Rogers, has recently suffered a catastrophic injury. She has been on heavy pain medication. She is grieving the loss of her physical mobility." He turned to look at me. His eyes were cold. "We submit that Ms. Rogers is projecting her anger about her accident onto her mother. Marlene Rogers acted at all times to protect the family assets from her daughter's unstable emotional state. Ms. Rogers has been erratic. She has been paranoid. She is being manipulated by her grandfather, who has a long history of controlling behavior toward my client." I gripped the edge of the table. My knuckles turned white. He was doing exactly what Marlene had done at the community hall. He was weaponizing my pain. He was telling the court that because I was broken physically, I must be broken mentally. He was using my trauma to discredit my reality. I looked at Grandpa. He was sitting perfectly still, his jaw set like granite. He did not look at the lawyer. He looked at the judge. Dana Kilmer stood up. She did not raise her voice. She did not sound angry. She sounded bored. "Your Honor," she said, "if we could move past the character assassination and look at the math." She projected a slide onto the screen at the side of the room. It was the timeline Grandpa had created on his dining room table. "August 12th, Dana said. "The date of the accident. August 14th. "The date of the surgery." She clicked a button. A series of red dots appeared on the timeline. "These are the transfers," she said. "Note the timestamps. This transfer of $500 was made at 3 p.m. on August 14th. At that exact moment, Caroline Rogers was in the recovery room, unconscious. She clicked again. "August 28th, she said. "The beneficiary change form." The document appeared on the screen. Magnified. The black line through my name was 3 feet long. The respondent attempted to disinherit her only child 2 weeks after a near-fatal accident. Dana said, "She attempted to transfer the deed of the family home to an entity known as the Larkwell Renewal Collective. Is the defense suggesting that Miss Rogers' broken pelvis forced her mother to sign a fraudulent deed transfer?" The room was silent. The judge looked at the screen. Then she looked at Marlene. Marlene shifted in her seat. For the first time, her composure cracked. She whispered something to her lawyer, who shook his head. Dana continued, "We also have the respondent's own words," she said, "on the bank signature card. She identified herself as the program coordinator for Larkwell. This was not a protective measure, Your Honor. This was an embezzlement scheme to fund her employment in a predatory organization. The shift in the room was palpable. The narrative had turned. It wasn't a sad story about a fighting family anymore. It was a story about theft. Then, it was Grandpa's turn to testify. He walked to the stand slowly. He declined the bailiff's offer of a hand. He sat down and adjusted his tie. "Mr. Weller," Dana asked, "why did you initiate the transfer of authority to Lakebridge?" Grandpa cleared his throat. "Because I had a duty," he said. "Can you explain? My daughter, Marlene, has always struggled with money." Grandpa said. He spoke softly, without malice. "I have helped her many times, but this was different. Caroline was helpless. She could not walk. She could not drive. She could not even open her own mail." He paused, looking at his hands. "A family trust is a promise," he said. "It is a promise that we look out for each other when the world gets hard." Marlene broke that promise. She saw her daughter's vulnerability not as a tragedy, but as an opportunity. I could not let that stand. He looked up at Marlene then. His eyes were wet. "I did not want to do this," he said to her, ignoring the lawyer. "I wanted you to be the mother she needed, but you refused, so I had to be the grandfather she needed." The lawyer for the defense declined to cross-examine him. There was no point. Grandpa hadn't attacked Marlene. He hadn't called her names. He had simply stated the devastating truth of her betrayal. His restraint made him bulletproof. We broke for lunch at noon. I was exhausted. My hip was throbbing so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Dana led us to a small conference room down the hall. We sat in silence for a moment, eating sandwiches from a vending machine. Then, there was a knock on the door. It was Marlene's lawyer. He did not come in. He stood in the doorway, holding a file folder. "My client is willing to discuss a settlement," he said. Dana looked at me. I nodded. "Go on," Dana said. "Ms. Rogers will agree to resign permanently as trustee," the lawyer said. "She will return 40% of the funds she withdrew, roughly $4,000. The rest has already been allocated to Larkwell." I thought bitterly. "In exchange," he continued, "Ms. Rogers requests that Caroline sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding the nature of the transfers and the involvement of the Larkwell Renewal Collective. She also requests that her visitation rights to the family home be restored, unsupervised." I stared at him. "She wants to come back to my house?" I asked. "She wants to be a mother," the lawyer said smoothly. "She wants to help you heal. She wants to put this ugly legal business behind you both." He placed the folder on the table. "If you sign this, the hearing ends today. No more testimony, no public record. You get your money back. You get your mom back." He left the room to let us discuss. I looked at the folder. It was so tempting. My body ached. My heart ached. I wanted to go home. I wanted to stop talking about money and betrayal. I wanted to pretend, just for a minute, that none of this had happened. 40%. Grandpa said quietly. "She spent the rest. I do not care about the money." I said, "I just want it to be over." Dana leaned forward. "Read the NDA clause." "Caroline," she said. I opened the folder. The clause was standard boilerplate, but one sentence stood out. "The petitioner agrees to refrain from filing any complaints, reports, or disclosures with any state, federal, or private regulatory body regarding the respondent's financial activities or affiliations. It blocks the investigation." I said. Dana nodded. "If you sign this, you cannot talk to the banking regulators. You cannot talk to the fraud unit. You effectively kill the state's inquiry into Larkwell, at least the part connected to your family." I realized then what this was. It wasn't Marlene offering an olive branch. It was Elliot Vance trying to plug a leak. They didn't care about me. They cared about keeping their operation in the dark. "If I sign this," I said, "I am protecting the people who hurt me." "Yes," Dana said, "and I'm leaving the door open for them to do it to someone else." "Yes," Dana said. I looked at the empty chair where Grandpa sat. He was watching me. He wasn't telling me what to do. He was letting me choose. I thought about Kendra Shaw, the woman who had lost her inheritance. I thought about the other families Dana had mentioned, the ones with elderly parents who were being fleeced. If I took the deal, I would get peace, but it would be a rotten peace. It would be a peace built on silence and complicity. I closed the folder. "No," I said. "Are you sure?" Dana asked. "This means we go back in there. It means this drags on for months. It means the local paper will probably pick up the story." "I know." I said, "It means she will never forgive you." Grandpa added softly, "If you reject this, you are declaring war on her God." I looked at him. "She already declared war on me." "Grandpa, she just hoped I would be too weak to fight back." I pushed the folder across the table. "Tell him no. Tell him I want everything back. And tell him I am not signing anything that protects Larkwell." Dana smiled. It was a small, fierce smile. "Good," she said. When we went back into the hearing room, Marlene's lawyer looked smug. He expected me to fold. He expected the crippled girl to take the crumbs and limp away. Dana stood up. "The petitioner rejects the settlement offer," she announced. Marlene's head snapped up. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. She realized I wasn't playing by the old rules. I wasn't seeking her approval anymore. The judge nodded. "Very well. We will proceed with the schedule." The hearing adjourned for the day at 4 o'clock. As we walked out to the parking lot, The sky had turned a dark, bruised purple. I was exhausted. But I felt clean. Grandpa drove us toward his house. He didn't turn on the radio. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't empty. "Caroline," he said after a few miles. "Yeah, Grandpa? There is something I need to tell you," he said. I looked at him. His hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. "What is it?" "I told the court that I had a duty," he said. "That was true. But I also had a debt." "A debt?" He sighed. A long, shuddering sound. 10 years ago," he said, "when you were in college, Marlene got into trouble, real trouble. She had been working as a bookkeeper for a small construction firm. She borrowed some money. From the petty cash, then from the payroll account." I stared at him. "She stole from her employer?" "She called it an advance." Grandpa said bitterly. "She always has a word for it. But yes, it was about $5,000. The owner found out. He was going to call the police. What happened?" I asked. "I paid him back." Grandpa said, "I wrote him a check for the full amount, plus interest. I begged him not to press charges. I told him she was going through a hard time. I told him she was a single mother." He glanced at me, his eyes full of shame. "I bailed her out. Caroline, I covered it up, and because I did that, she never faced the consequences. She learned that if she cried hard enough, if she spun a sad enough story, someone would fix it." I sat there, stunned. The pattern went back further than I knew. I enabled her. Grandpa said, "I thought I was protecting her, but I was just feeding the monster. When she took your money, I felt responsible, because I had taught her that she could get away with it." He pulled the car into his driveway and turned off the engine. He didn't look at me. He looked at the garage door. "I am sorry. Caroline," he whispered, "I am sorry I didn't stop it sooner. I am sorry my weakness became your burden." I looked at this old man, this man of granite and rules, and I saw how much he loved his daughter. I saw how that love had been twisted and used against him, just as it had been used against me. I reached out and covered his hand with mine. "You didn't steal the money." "Grandpa," I said, "she did. But you tried to save her." I said, "That is not a crime. But we are done saving her now." I squeezed his hand. "Real love isn't rescuing someone," I said, realizing the truth as I spoke it. "It is refusing to let them destroy you, and it is refusing to let them destroy anyone else." Grandpa looked at me. A single tear tracked through the road map of wrinkles on his cheek. He nodded. "We are done saving her," he repeated. We went inside. I sat on the couch while Grandpa made tea. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Dana. "Update from the clerk." The message read, "The judge has granted our motion. Marlene is ordered to appear for a deposition next week. She will be required to answer questions under oath regarding the Larkwell transfers. If she lies, it is perjury." I showed the phone to Grandpa. "She has to testify." I said. He set the tea down. "She has spent her whole life avoiding the truth." He said, "Now she has to sit in a room with it." I thought about Marlene. I thought about the commitment statement she had signed, pledging to cut off energy vampires. I wondered if she realized that the law was the ultimate energy vampire. It didn't care about vibrations. It didn't care about abundance mindsets. It only cared about facts, and for the first time in her life, Marlene was about to run out of places to hide. The morning of the hearing was the kind of Tuesday that felt like a Sunday, quiet and gray, with a low sky that pressed down on the rooftops. I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom, looking at the woman who stared back. She looked older than 33. There were new lines around her mouth, etched by 2 months of chronic pain and sleepless nights. I picked up my cane. I had graduated from crutches a week ago, but the cane was still necessary. It was a sleek, black aluminum stick, a prop I hated but required. For a moment, I considered leaving it in the car. I considered walking into that courtroom and gritting my teeth, hiding the limp, pretending that I was whole so that my mother couldn't see the damage she had ignored. But then I remembered the final notice envelope. I remembered the shower where I had cried until the hot water ran out. No, I would not hide. I walked out to the car where Grandpa Harold was waiting. I let the limp show. I let the rhythm of my walk, step, click, drag, echo on the pavement. Visibility was my only weapon left. If she wanted to claim that I was manifesting my trauma, I would show her exactly what that manifestation looked like in the flesh. The courthouse was busy. We navigated the security line, the metal detector beeping when I walked through. I had to explain the pins in my hip to a bored guard. Grandpa stood by my side, silent and solid as a seawall. We entered the hearing room. It was the same room as before, but the air felt different today, heavier, charged with the static of impending finality. Marlene was already there. She was wearing a cream-colored suit today, something soft and expensive. She had a notebook open in front of her, and she was writing furiously. She did not look up when we entered. She was building her fortress of paper, scratching out defenses against reality. The judge called the session to order. This was not a trial in the criminal sense, not yet, but a civil deposition and hearing regarding the removal of a trustee for malfeasance. But the stakes felt higher than prison. We were litigating the definition of love. Marlene was called to the stand first. She walked up with her head high. She swore the oath to tell the truth. But I saw the way her hand hesitated on the Bible, to Marlene. Truth was a fluid concept, something that shifted depending on the vibration of the room. Dana Kilmer stood up. She adjusted her glasses. "Ms. Rogers," Dana began. "Can you explain to the court the nature of the transfers you made from the family trust between August 12th and September 30th? Marlene adjusted the microphone. "I was reallocating assets," she said. Her voice was steady, practiced. The trust was stagnant. It was sitting in low-yield accounts. I was moving it into vehicles that aligned with the family's future growth. "And what were those vehicles?" Dana asked. Marlene hesitated. A tiny crack appeared in her poise. "They were educational investments," she said. Dana picked up a document. "We have records of 12 separate transfers to an entity called the Larkwell Renewal Collective." Dana said, "Is this an educational institution? Is it accredited?" "It is a school of thought," Marlene said, her voice sharpening. "It is a place where people learn to unlock their potential. It is more valuable than some college degree. It teaches you how to be a sovereign being." "And does this school of thought require you to pay $40,000 in 6 weeks?" Dana asked. Marlene flushed. "You are focusing on the numbers," she said, sounding annoyed. "You are missing the principle. The money was an energy exchange. I was investing in my own capacity to lead this family. If I am abundant, the family is abundant." "So you spent your daughter's medical savings on your own abundance?" Dana asked. "I did not spend it," Marlene snapped. "I circulated it. There is a difference." The judge looked down at Marlene over her spectacles. The distinction between spending and circulating seemed lost on the court. Dana moved on. She projected the beneficiary change form onto the screen again. "Ms. Rogers," Dana said, "do you recognize this document?" Marlene looked at the screen. She blinked rapidly. I remember filling out some paperwork," she said vaguely. "There were a lot of forms." "This form attempts to remove Caroline Rogers as the primary beneficiary of the trust," Dana said, "and it replaces her with the Larkwell Renewal Collective. Care of Elliot Vance. Why did you do this?" Marlene shifted in the chair. "Caroline was in a coma," she said. "She was not in a coma," Dana corrected. "She was in surgery, and then she was in recovery. She was awake. She was not herself," Marlene cried out, leaning forward. "She was medicated. She was weak. I was afraid that people would take advantage of her." "So you decided to give her house to a man named Elliot Vance?" Dana asked. "To protect her?" Marlene's eyes darted around the room. She was losing the narrative, the principles of Larkwell. The vague language of protection and flow were disintegrating under the harsh light of specific questions. "Elliot is a visionary," Marlene said, her voice trembling. "He is a financial genius. He would have managed the assets better than a bank. He would have doubled the principal in a year. I was doing it for her. I was trying to build a legacy." Dana let the silence hang in the air. It was a cruel, heavy silence. "Ms. Rogers," Dana said softly, "Elliot Vance is currently under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission for running a Ponzi scheme targeting distressed families. Did you know that?" Marlene's face went white. It wasn't the pale of fear. It was the pale of shock. She genuinely didn't know. She had drunk the Kool-Aid so deeply, she didn't realize poison was the main ingredient. "That is a lie," Marlene whispered. "You are trying to sabotage the mission." "I am trying to find the money," Dana said. She sat down. Marlene remained on the stand, looking small and confused. She kept looking at her lawyer, but he was staring at his table, unwilling to make eye contact with a sinking ship. Then, it was my turn. I stood up. I took my cane. I walked to the stand. The click of the metal tip on the floor was the only sound in the room. I sat down. My hip throbbed, a dull, grinding ache that radiated down my leg. I took a sip of water. "Ms. Rogers," the judge said gently, "you may give your statement." I looked at Marlene. She was looking at me now. Her eyes were pleading. She wanted me to save her. She wanted me to be the daughter I had always been, the fixer, the buffer, the soft place to land. I took a breath. "I am not here to call my mother evil," I said. My voice shook slightly, then steadied. "I do not think she woke up one morning and decided to destroy me. I think she woke up and decided that her needs were more important than my survival." I looked at the judge. When I came home from the hospital, I could not walk to the bathroom without help. I could not cook a meal. I could not drive to my physical therapy appointments. I was 33 years old, and I was helpless. I paused, but the physical pain was manageable. I continued. What was not manageable was the silence. It was knowing that the person who should have been holding my hand was in another state, signing my name on checks. It was the final notice envelope on the table. It was the fear that I would lose my house because my mother needed to buy a higher level of consciousness. I looked back at Marlene. "Abandonment is not an abstract concept," I said. "It is an action. It is measurable. It is the $6,000 that didn't go to the surgeon. It is the 3 weeks of missed therapy because I couldn't afford the copay. It is the panic attack I had in a parking lot because I felt unsafe in my own life." Marlene flinched. She told me that my accident was a lesson I had manifested. I said, "She told me that my pain was my responsibility. But the theft? That was her choice, and I am done paying for her choices." I finished. I did not cry. I felt hollowed out, scraped clean of emotion. I had said the thing I was most afraid to say, that my mother had failed me, and that it mattered. Grandpa Harold was the final witness. He didn't take the stand. He simply stood from his seat at the counsel table when the judge asked him to clarify the timeline of the trust transfer. "Mr. Weller," the judge asked, "the defense claims that you entrapped Ms. Rogers. They claim that you set up the transfer of authority to Lakebridge specifically to catch her in a violation. Is this true?" Grandpa stood tall. "I set up a safety net, Your Honor," he said. He picked up the Lakebridge document. "When I transferred the authority, I included a clause. It is standard in cases where financial exploitation is suspected. It is an automated trigger. If the suspended trustee attempts to access the funds after being notified of the suspension, it triggers a forensic audit." He looked at Marlene. "I told her," Grandpa said, "I told her on the phone that Lakebridge was in control. I told her the accounts were frozen. If she had stopped then, if she had just accepted the limit, nothing would have happened. Lakebridge would have managed the bills. She would have received her stipend. No audit, no investigation." He paused, but she didn't stop. Grandpa said, "She tried to override the freeze. She tried to force the beneficiary change. She walked into the trap because she refused to believe the rules applied to her." "I didn't catch her, Your Honor. She caught herself." Marlene stood up then. "She couldn't help it. The containment field broke. I was trying to save us," she screamed. The bailiff moved forward, but the judge held up a hand. Marlene pointed a shaking finger at me, then at Grandpa. You ruined it, she shouted. Her face was twisted, ugly with entitlement. I was so close. I was almost at level 4. Do you know what that means? I was going to be a regional director. I was going to have a salary. I was going to be someone. She looked at me, and the venom in her voice was pure acid. You ruined my rebirth. Caroline, you dragged me back down into this mud. You are so selfish. You always have been. You get hurt, and suddenly the whole world has to stop for you. What about me? What about my life? The room went dead silent. There it was. The truth. It wasn't about the principles. It wasn't about protection. It was about her rebirth. It was about her desperate need to be important, to be a director, to be special. And I was just the obstacle in the road. She realized what she had said. She saw the look on the judge's face. She saw her lawyer close his eyes and pinch the bridge of his nose. She sat down slowly, covering her face with her hands. The judge didn't need to hear anything else. She didn't need closing arguments. The outburst was the closing argument. The judge cleared her throat. She shuffled her papers. The court finds that Marlene Rogers has breached her fiduciary duty to the Rogers Family Trust. The judge stated, "The evidence of misappropriation is clear and convincing. The attempt to alter the beneficiary designation during the petitioner's incapacitation is particularly egregious." Marlene did not look up. Effective immediately. Marlene Rogers is permanently removed as trustee. Control of the trust will remain with Lakebridge Fiduciary Services until such time as Caroline Rogers is deemed medically and financially recovered, at which point it will transfer to her sole control. The judge looked at the financial documents. The respondent is ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $8,400. This will be deducted from any future distributions she might otherwise have been entitled to from the estate. And, the judge added, her voice hardening, given the testimony regarding the Larkwell Renewal Collective and the involvement of Mr. Elliot Vance, this court is referring the entire transcript of these proceedings to the State Attorney General's office for review. We are also forwarding the evidence of the attempted deed transfer to the Fraud Division. The gavel banged, a sharp, wooden crack that sounded like a bone breaking. It was over. We walked out into the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed. I felt exhausted, a bone-deep weariness that made my legs tremble. Marlene was standing near the water fountain. Her lawyer had already left, practically sprinting to the elevator to get away from the disaster. She was alone. She saw us coming. She didn't run. She stood there, smoothing the front of her expensive suit. She looked at me, and for a second, the mask tried to reassemble itself. She tried to summon the serene, enlightened guru. "Caroline," she said. I stopped. Grandpa stopped beside me. "I forgive you," she said. I stared at her. "What?" "I forgive you for this," she said, gesturing to the courtroom doors. "I know you are acting out of pain. I know you are blocked. I am going to pray for you to find clarity." It was breathtaking, even now, after the judge had called her a thief, after she had screamed at me for ruining her rebirth. She was still trying to be the bigger person. She was still trying to win the spiritual contest, but then the mask slipped, just a fraction. Her eyes welled up. Her voice dropped, losing the rehearsed cadence. "Can we just stop now?" she asked. Her voice was small. It sounded like the mother I remembered from my childhood, the one who would ask for a hug after she had yelled at me. "Can we just go back to normal? I am tired. Caroline, I just want to go home." She took a step toward me. "I can make you soup," she offered, "for your leg." It was the most dangerous moment of the entire ordeal. The pull to say yes was gravitational. I wanted the soup. I wanted the mom. I wanted to pretend that the last 2 months had been a bad dream. It would be so easy to let her hug me. It would be so easy to let her back in. I looked at Grandpa. He didn't move. He didn't signal. He let me be the adult. I looked at Marlene. I looked at the woman who had left me to rot so she could buy a badge that said Level 4. "No, Mom," I said. Her face fell. "But I want to help," she whispered. "You cannot help. I said. You can only take. I shifted my weight on my cane, and I already stopped. I said, I stopped chasing you. I stopped trying to buy your love with my silence. It is over. I turned away. Caroline, she called after me. You are making a mistake. You are choosing fear. I kept walking. Step, click, drag. I didn't look back. I knew that if I looked back, I might turn into a pillar of salt, or worse, a daughter again. We walked out to the parking lot. The air was cool. The sun was trying to break through the clouds, casting a pale, watery light on the asphalt. Grandpa unlocked the car. We got in. He sat in the driver's seat, his hands resting on the wheel. He looked old. The fight had taken something out of him, a reserve of energy he wouldn't get back. Did we win? I asked quietly. I don't know. Grandpa said. He looked out the windshield at the courthouse. We stopped the bleeding. He said, we saved the house. We put the truth on the record. But we lost her. I said, we lost her a long time ago. Caroline. He said, we just finally signed the death certificate. He started the car. I leaned my head back against the seat. I closed my eyes. I felt a profound, aching emptiness in my chest. It wasn't the relief I had expected. It wasn't triumph. It was just space, a vast, open space where my mother used to be. But as we pulled out of the parking lot, I realized something else. The panic was gone. The screech of the tires didn't make me jump. The fear of the mailbox was gone. The final notice terror was gone. I was empty, yes. But I was safe. The emptiness was mine. It was my house, my money, my life. And for the first time in 33 years, I wasn't renting space in it from her chaos. I opened my eyes. I watched the road unfold in front of us. Where to? Grandpa asked. Home, I said, and for the first time, I meant it. Thank you for listening to My Mother Abandoned Us After My Car Accident. Grandpa's one move changed everything. This was a story about the hard work of boundaries and the painful reality that sometimes saving yourself means letting go of the people who are supposed to protect you. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Have you ever had to make a one move to protect your family from someone inside it? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and if you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories. We post new, emotional, and realistic drama stories every week. Your support helps us keep writing. Thank you for being part of our community.